Didn't mean to startle everyone. Good evening, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 2013 meeting of the Abingdon, Virginia Town Council. A couple of things that I would ask folks tonight, one of which is that if you have a cell phone with you tonight, we'd ask you to turn it off, please, and as a courtesy to everyone involved. Normally, we have a package of meeting materials that is available for, I think that's where it went, by golly, and that's fine. Okay, Mr. Macbeth is looking at the meeting materials that a copy of the documents that are prepared for the council prior to the meeting has been available, and if you would like to look at it, you're more than welcome to. He'd be happy to share with you. Otherwise, again, we would ask or point out that information is available. That being said, I'll ask our clerk please to call the roll.
Let's see, Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Humphreys.
Here.
Mr. Berry.
Here.
Mrs. Lowe.
Here.
Mayor Morgan.
Here.
And let the record reflect that all 5 council members are present this evening.
Okay, thank you. And our Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be led by our Vice Mayor, Mrs. Lowe.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, I believe we have several special employee recognitions this evening. I'll turn this item over to you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'm going down on the floor if that's all right.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's all right. You can step down there if you would.
Hopefully I won't fall. Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public, it's always a great opportunity for me to come forward before you sometimes at the beginning of each month to recognize certain employees of the town who've been here for a certain period of time. We're very fortunate and blessed to have a good group of employees with the town. Most of the time they stay here for a very long period of time, and I do want to just commend all of them, the ones who will be recognized tonight, for their excellent work for the town of Abingdon and what they do. The first person I would like to recognize, and this is a very special employee recognition, is that we have an individual who's been with us 19 to 20 years with the town of Abingdon, and she's going to be retiring in the month of July. She has been the clerk for our sewer department for quite a long time and dealt with customer relations of people who came in to pay their bill or sent bills in and had various different inquiries. But I would like for everyone to join in a great round of applause as I call Miss Bobby Moretz up here, who will be retiring from the town this month. We'll be celebrating with Bobby a little bit more throughout the upcoming weeks ahead. She's still got a couple of weeks to put in before retirement. But as is customary when an employee retires, we do like to give them a seal of the town of Abingdon, which bears the signatures of the elected officials on the town council, as well as the town manager. And this one, unfortunately, is not yours, but it is a...
It's a facsimile there.
It is one that you will be presented with, and it'll be framed up nicely like this one here within the next few days. So
Thank you so much.
I hope you will display it proudly.
I sure will. Thank you.
And then so you can keep track of all that time on your hand, we'd like to present you, and you don't get to keep this either because it has to be engraved yet, but we'd like to present you with a nice clock from the town of Abingdon, and I'm sure we'll have a few other little things that we'd like to present to you a little bit later on. But Bobby, we really appreciate all that you've done for the town over the years, and you'll be greatly missed by me, by the council, and by all of your fellow staff members.
Thank you so much. That doesn't have an alarm on it, does it? I can say I'm truly not going to miss that alarm going off.
Well, thank you.
Thank
If
you
we
so
could get
much.
you to step forward so we can get a nice photo of you, and I'm going to let you hold your own clock.
All right.
Okay, I'll get over here so I don't block you. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you for your
so
service.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you so
Here, here.
much. Is that
We have several other employee recognitions for this month. I believe due to conflicts in schedule, we only have one of these individuals present here today, but if I do call your name, there appears to be a lot of people out there tonight. If I do call your name and you hear it, please come forward. But for recognition for 15 years of service as the accounts payable clerk in the finance department, we have Miss Jane Brown. I believe Jane had a conflict tonight. For recognition of 5 years of service as a laborer in the sewer department, we have Brandon Singleton. For recognition of 5 years of service as technician under the town engineer, we have Michael Surrett. For recognition of 5 years of service as sales coordinator with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we have Tanya Triplett, and I know Tanya's back there. If you'll come forward, Tanya. And for recognition of 5 years of service as the junior civil engineer under the town engineer, we have Tyler Bensel, who could not be present. So if you want to come forward, Tanya. I'd just like to say that Tanya has done an excellent job in our tourism department. She's very out there in the public eye all the time. She makes all of the folks who come and visit the town very, very happy. And we're very fortunate and blessed to have her on our staff. So if you all will join with me in just thanking Tanya for her. And we do have a nice little 5-year plaque that you do get to keep. It's got your name on it. And then 5-year service pin. And I hope you wear that proudly. And if we could go over and get one more photo.
All right. All right. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tanya's secret weapon's here tonight. It's her husband Glenn has accompanied her to the meeting tonight.
You go, girl.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have recognized several employees this evening for their contributions in long-standing service to the town, but it's my pleasure to announce that we are prepared to name the next group of recipients for the Arthur Campbell Community Services Award. This is an award that was established by the town council last year. It's intended to be the highest honor that is offered by the town of Abingdon. I see one of our recipients with us this evening, our Mayor Emeritus, as I take pleasure in calling her, Ms. Lois Humphreys, who is with her this evening. But where's your medal? And I'll have to ask that. I'm sure she will wear it when she comes in October to where we have the awards ceremony for our nominees for the Arthur Campbell Community Services Award. Council has chosen to basically make 3 awards per year, and I have asked several of our council members if they would present the nominees for this year, or the nominees that have been selected by the council, and I would begin with Mr. Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is my great pleasure to announce the recipient of Graham Michael Newman, known as Mickey Newman. Mickey was with the town of Abingdon for 24 years, and through his had very many accomplishments, and through his great vision, the town had taken many great strides. In 1987 and 88, he led the annexation effort that tripled the size of the town of Abingdon. The building that you're in right now was his vision, and he commandeered the extensive expansion and renovation of the town hall. He also entered into the agreement that made a joint venture of the Virginia Creeper Trail with the town of Damascus. He spearheaded the Harry Coombs Recreation Center. He also did the acquisition and development of the Stone Mill Business and Technology Park, and in particular the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator. Helped establish the local farmers market, and he revitalized the Depot Square as the focal point in downtown Abingdon. And it's with great honor that I am able to announce Mickey Newman as one of the recipients of the Arthur Campbell Award this year.
Thank you very much, and I believe Mr. Howard has the next nominee.
Yes, I'd like to announce the nomination of Betsy White as a recipient this year. Very prominent citizen of Abingdon. She's been the executive director of William King twice, president of Virginia Highlands Festival several times, very instrumental on the Board of Architectural Review for the town, and is the current president of Round the Mountain. And so that's the nomination I would like to announce this time.
Okay, and Mr. Berry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and last but not least, I would like to nominate and announce the award for Walter Blair Keller. Many of you all know him. I probably could stop right there, but a lifelong resident of Washington County, married to his wife Gilda, and they have 2 children. He was a statistician with the Virginia Agricultural Services. He is, as you know, loves history and loves to tell tales, so we've all heard many of those. Active member in the local chapter of the Appalachian Trail Club, formed Troop 70 in Green Springs, and you all know he is Mr. Boy Scout. He's always prepared. Active member with the Abingdon Muster Grounds, and is a descendant of 5 veterans of the Battle of Kings Mountain. So it's with pride that I read that and nominate Walter Blair Keller.
Thank you. Perhaps our Vice Mayor might wish to make a motion regarding these nominees.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Town Council of Abingdon, Virginia formalize the nomination of Mickey Newman, Blair Keller, and Betsy White.
Very good. And is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate for the class of 2013 the recipients of the Arthur Campbell Community Services Award, Mr. Mickey Newman, Mr. Blair Keller, and Ms. Betsy White. Is there any further discussion on these on this motion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you very much, and I'll ask Ms. Rosenbaum if she will remind me of the date of the awards dinner that will...
Yes, sir. Saturday, October the 12th.
Okay, and I believe that'll be at Hartwood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there will certainly be publicity about this event in the meantime. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a special presentation this evening that I believe Mr. Rick Humphreys and Mr. Jackson and others will be involved with, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Humphreys at this point.
Yes, and I think that if we could go down the floor too, and the members of the Muster Ground Steering Committee, if they could meet me down at the speaker stand over here to the right of the horseshoe. Well, we want, as a committee, the Muster Grounds Committee wanted to present a certificate of appreciation to Patricia Music Hatfield, who was the state regent for the Daughters of the American Revolution for the state of Virginia. Her term is now over, isn't it, Pat? And she is now the Vice President General for
National.
Yes.
National Vice
Yes,
President.
this is why I had to have help also. Anyway, which is a great national honor and supersedes the state, and so she has gone on to bigger things. But while she was here, she did wonderful things for the Muster Grounds. Through her championing the Muster Grounds as her project while she was state regent, she raised many thousands of dollars. I'm not, Gary, do you have the exact total?
I don't know the exact total.
But $40,000 to put in the vitrines or the display cases at the Muster Grounds that house all the artifacts. Through her championship of this, we were able to have top-notch display cases to be able to have articles that we wanted down there that without that, people would not have donated their or let us borrow their articles that go everywhere from the dirt that William Campbell carried to the basket that Patrick Henry's sister owned to many others, the Snodgrass Bible, many other artifacts that we would not have been able to obtain had it not been for Pat and all the Daughters of the American Revolution all over the state of Virginia. So, it takes that tie that binds. Pat Hatfield was that person. Thank you, Pat, and we wanted to give you this certificate of appreciation. So if Pat Hatfield will come forward. Yes, and I will read it. To Mrs. Patricia Music Hatfield, in honor and recognition of her outstanding efforts and contributions as State Regent of the Virginia Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution toward the display of artifacts in the Keller Interpretive Center and the Abingdon Muster Grounds this first day of July in the year 2013, signed Edward Morgan, Mayor of the town of Abingdon. If everybody will give Pat a round of applause, please.
Okay, now you're going to have to come back here for one, too.
Now, I would also like to take, because I did not bring this up, but there's a national award of projects that are submitted of historical significance all over the United States. We should have been number one, but we were number two in the entire United States. The Muster Grounds was the number two, and because of Pat's championing that project. So if you'll give her a big round of applause for being
Oh, yeah, come on over here. We're going to have another photograph. And, I would just comment that we're so appreciative of all that you've done, to help raise the money, help, preserve the Muster Grounds, help make it accessible to so many folks. But, the real thing you accomplished was that you made an awful lot of people aware of the story of the Over Mountain Men and their role in the Revolution. Thank you so much for all you've done for us.
I bet you didn't know your picture went all over the country.
I didn't. That's for sure. All right. But I was in good company. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay. All right, very good. All right, we have a little bit more serious business to handle this evening, and the next item we have is under petitions, public hearings, and first reading of ordinances. First item we have is consideration of the approval of a final plat for a proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision is of property consisting of 6.07 plus or minus acres owned by the Kings Mountain Properties LLC, formerly Keeley Johnson Wholesale, which is located adjacent to the north side of Empire Drive. It's proposed to be subdivided into 6 lots ranging in size from .78 acres to 1.29 acres. This is on tax map number 106, section 71A. Mr. Garrett Jackson, Assistant Town Manager, and Mr. J.D. Moorfield, the property owner, is here this evening, and I'll ask Mr. Jackson, first of all, to come forward and present this to us.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At the May Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed this plat.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not on my game tonight, but customarily, we do approve the minutes, at this point in time. And, my screen skipped a little bit here on my tablet. I'll blame it on that. But we have, council, 2 sections of minutes to consider this evening. We have the June 3rd, 2013 work session meeting, and then the regular meeting minutes of that same evening. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be noted?
Mr. Mayor, just one on page 3 of the regular meeting, when Mr. Kelly was going over the bonding, he mentioned the $1 million for KVAT, but he listed the projects in the meeting, but they didn't get listed if they could be inserted, just the project and dollar amount.
Okay. And I would presume we could take care of that. Any other corrections or additions to be noted? Council, what's your pleasure regarding this?
I move that we approve both sets of minutes as modified.
Second. Have a motion and second to approve both sets of minutes as modified. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Abstain.
Okay. And Mayor Moore?
Aye. Okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have so rudely interrupted you. And we will revert back to our initial action, which was a petition for consideration of approval for a final plat. And I won't recite all that information again.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of council, at the May Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the final plat of the Kings Mountain subdivision property there on Empire Drive. And I'm going to read directly from Mr. Jim Smith, Town Engineer's memo as to what they actually recommend for approval to Planning Commission or to the Town Council this evening. A waiver to construct pavement, widening, sidewalk, curb, and gutter on Empire Drive, and that every subdivided property be served from a private street with only one single entrance to Empire Drive, and no additional entrances will be permitted on Empire Drive to serve the development in the final plat be approved pending receipt of, number 1, VDOT's written approval of the entrance, number 2, private restrictive covenants, 3, fees, 4, bonds, 5, easements, and 6, all applicable improvement plans required by the subdivision ordinance as approved by the town engineer, that those items be addressed. I would actually have to defer to Mr. Smith as to whether or not those have been addressed at this time, but that was the recommendation of the Planning Commission, was to approve upon those items.
Okay, is Mr. Smith here?
Yes.
Okay. Have those items been addressed, Mr. Smith?
No, sir, they have not.
Then I would ask you, gentlemen, if it is appropriate for us to take action on this at the present time if those items have not been addressed.
It certainly hasn't been the case in the past with this amount of items being addressed. The beginning of that recommendation from Mr. Smith reads, should the Planning Commission and Town Council choose to approve the requested variances and to conditionally approve the plat, i.e. the final plat being held until the final engineering design of roads and sewer are provided, then he has those following recommendations. The way that reads, it could be that you all approve it, but it's not released by the Town Engineer's office until those items are addressed. But I think that's a matter that may be addressable by the attorneys.
All right, so a conditional approval would perhaps be appropriate if the council so desired.
I think that would be the case, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I know Mr. Moorfield's been in and out of the Planning Commission many times on this piece of property. I feel certain that he will take the necessary efforts to see to it that those measures are addressed. And of course, with conditional approval, ultimately I have to sign off on that plat, so I would not sign off on it until such time as those conditions were met.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion about this or questions? Okay. Council, what's your pleasure regarding this matter?
Maybe I should, so I'm looking at the planning commission minutes. Is that what the planning commission voted on?
Let me get there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It should be all of those items that were in Mr. Smith's memo were what were addressed by the planning.
Okay, so that's what the vote is from the planning commission.
And there were 2 abstentions.
Okay.
And do you have any problems with the variance or the suggestions?
No, ma'am. It was my understanding that it was approved like that because there's a lot of money involved, and there's no use ponying up that money until it's time to move. And when we put everything in place, it was my understanding that all the signatures would come forth so that we could record the plat and move on. That was my understanding, but I wasn't involved in the engineering. You'll have to ask Mr. Bundy over here about the engineering.
So, Mr. Kelly, would you recommend a proper motion?
Yes, I would just recommend that the council follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission with the conditional approval of the plat.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to follow the action of the Planning Commission and offer conditional approval. The final completion of the plat documents being subject to certification by appropriate staff that everything is in order. Okay, any further discussion? All right, Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye, thank you. All righty, our next item is a public hearing on the first reading and ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to repeal, amend, and reenact Chapter 38, Health and Sanitation, Article 2, Condition of Premises of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Abingdon. Ms. Deb Eisenhower, our town attorney, is here along with Mr. C.J. McLaughlin, our code enforcement officer. If you folks will introduce this to us, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council, we have this amendment to ordinance in Chapter 38, Health and Sanitation, that features some updated language in the definitions section. Look at the term parcel, and I'll let the officer expand on that.
Thank you. All right. I guess probably we've been working on this for probably about 2 months now. The subject came up of dealing with right-of-way maintenance and who's responsible for it. And in the past, it's been customary that when a parcel owner take care of the adjacent right-of-way to the parcel. And an issue came up that we more or less was going to have to have some type of enforcement action to it. And when we went to go and checking code, we realized that we really didn't have anything that required a parcel owner to take care of that right-of-way. So we went back checking with other localities in Virginia. Didn't find a whole lot. I said, well, something's up here. I'm not looking for the right thing. So I did contact with City of Bristol, and they actually define in their code private property. And so, and they take it more or less everything, including up to, they take a parcel and they say, we include everything up to the edge of the roadway and or curb line. Well, that pretty much took care of what we needed to take care of. And so we took their definition of private property, added it to our definition of a parcel, and that's what you have before you today. Parcel means any real estate and or interest therein lying in the town of Abingdon, Virginia, identified by the town of Abingdon or Washington County official tax map. Number, that's where ours stopped. And then we added herein including but not limited to yards, grounds, driveways, entrance or passageways, parking areas, storage areas, vacant land, body of water, and including sidewalks, grass strips, one-half of alleys, curbs, or right-of-ways up to the edge of pavement of any public street. So,
Okay, now in terms of what this means, are we saying that the town may maintain a right-of-way on a piece of property,
Yes.
but we only it's only a right-of-way as opposed to our property? Somebody, tell me what this means.
Mr. Mayor, I think the gist of what they're getting at relates more to sidewalks and space between roadways and sidewalks, which are actually properties that are owned by a town, but the gist of this ordinance would be to require the landowner, which has been the common practice for as long as, at least as long, well beyond when I was around, in terms of snow removal and grass maintenance of those areas of public right-of-way that are in between sidewalk and street.
So does that also mean that they can take to, like in the brick where there's grass growing, that they can take preventative measures and use chemicals to treat that without having to undergo any chemical treatment school or education?
Well, we would hope not, but that's something in terms of the sidewalks and the moss and the weeds, in terms of the brick, that the town crews have been taking care of the vegetation that grows there.
So if we require them physically to take care of them, do we require them legally?
Yes.
So if someone falls and breaks their leg because of a loose brick in front of their house, they can sue the homeowner?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well, the homeowner should have insurance on it then, since they're actually, they're taking responsibility for it. So if they're taking responsibility for it, do they not kind of, it can be viewed that, well, they're taking the physical responsibility of it, so they're legally responsible if they let it grow, big, as somebody falls and breaks their leg?
Yeah, well, I am aware of snow removal issues where there have been litigation and landowner has been, I'm not sure if they've been held accountable, but they've been at least sued in those types
Well,
of.
the reason I'm asking is so that as we do this, if CJ goes out and tries to get this enforced, maybe telling the people that they need to talk to their insurance companies to have them insure that sidewalk in front of their house also.
If the insurance will do that, yes.
But if they won't,
It's not really the sidewalk that they're responsible for, it's the space of the right-of-way between the sidewalk and where their property is.
Yeah, for purposes of the ordinances before you tonight, it's only the grass area between the sidewalk and the curb of the roadway. I referenced, which is, I think, what you're getting at, that we already have an ordinance in place where you are required to take care of the snow removal
Right.
that is on the sidewalk in front of your residence. That ordinance already exists.
Yes.
Well, let me ask another question.
In terms of liability, that would be something they probably ought to contact their.
well, I'm just wondering if we're what I'm looking at is I also want to make sure we're not assigning them. Because in doing this, we could be assigning them the
Well, the town's still
liability.
going to have liability with regard to.
Well, no,
what we own.
shotgun lawsuit, they're going to sue everybody.
Well, let me ask another question that has come up on several occasions related to this general definition, where I've had people, let's say you have an unopened alley that runs across your property, and I've had some situations just in the last few weeks where somebody called me to let me know that we needed to be out there and taking care of our unopened alley. And I must confess that I've been remiss about getting back to these folks. But if there is an unopened alley, is the person whose alley is it to maintain and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that requires a little additional legal research into those issues. I'm putting my lawyer hat back on, although I need to probably be asking Ms. Eisenhower this question, but I would take the position if it's an unopened right-of-way and I were an attorney out there representing somebody, I'm going to come after the town, probably come after the landowner as well.
Well, and then there's a question of maintaining it more so than, the question of it being an a liability issue. You know, these folks wanted us to get out there and grub the, you know, the weeds and the privet hedge and so forth out of, you know, our alley. And, you know, I think it's a legitimate question that needs to be addressed at some point.
I was asked the same thing. In fact, I was told if it's the town's, then the town needed to take care of it. If it wasn't, they needed to close it officially and then let them take care of it.
Yeah.
Because I know some of it's so steep that I'm not sure you could get a town vehicle. I mean, you know, if you get a lawnmower.
I know there have been several petitions brought before the town council over the past 7 or 8 years since I've sat in this seat to close off those alleyways for that very purpose, that they've been maintaining the unopened alleyways. And I guess it was a couple of years ago, the council pretty much took the position we did not want to close off those alleyways unless it was just absolutely necessary. Those folks, some of those folks are still maintaining it even though we have taken that position.
Well, Mr. Kelly's exactly right when he says every one of these situations has its own set of circumstances, and the case law is greatly varied on all of them. So any situation like this would depend on the given circumstances.
The issue that I'm raising regarding the question of unopened alleys, is it relevant to the topic that's before us this evening?
This addresses?
It does address. It
It's part of the definition.
1/2 of alleys in this definition of a parcel. And there again, this definition is falling underneath condition of premises dealing with weeds and trash.
I think, Mr. Mayor, what you're going to see with, as we get further down the agenda and dealing with urban pathway project, as that project moves forward, you will see the town take
Exactly.
more control and maintenance measures over those, because we're in effect putting open trails in those locations that have either been abandoned or unopened over a substantial period of time. And a lot of those questions that are coming forward will go away at that point in time.
Well, but conversely, if you take over maintain those right-of-ways, then why would you take care of maintaining the right-of-ways in front of someone's house? It's already been opened also. That's what the sidewalk does, is open the entrance and egress off that property, or not off the property, but, you know, for public transportation across there.
I can't answer that, Mr. Humphreys, other than I can say that if it were in front of my house, I would want to maintain it, because when I mow my grass, I would want the grass mowed at the same time.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not the way that you and I would feel. I'm just saying that someone who would look at it there and go, hey, listen, I pay my taxes, the town really should know that. It's on their property, it's on their right-of-way.
Okay, let me offer this suggestion. We're basically, this is listed as a public hearing, and we've not heard from the public yet. And I would propose that, you know, we have our public hearing, see if there's anyone here tonight who wishes to address this, and then we can have further discussions as appropriate, and, you know, choose to act or not act as the case might be this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's a little more interesting topic than I had initially expected. Again, this is, I thank you very much for introducing the topic to us and giving us some background information on this. This is a public hearing on the first reading of the ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to repeal, amend, and reenact Chapter 38, Health and Sanitation, Article 2, Condition of Premises of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Abingdon. And really the question that we seem to be addressing in the course of this proposal is a change in the definition of the word parcel and its implications. At the present time, I will declare the public hearing to be open at this moment. Is there anyone present here this evening who wishes to address the council regarding this matter? If so, they may come forward at the present time. Again, if there is anyone present who wishes to address the council on this specific topic, they may come forward at the present time. Dr. Moore, you look like you, okay.
Looks like about 35.
And if you'll introduce yourself for the record, please.
Looks like Jim Moore.
Okay.
Let me try to understand the definition of one's private property
is to the curb of the street?
I'll defer to our attorney to answer that.
Did I hear that correctly back there?
It pretty much depends on particulars, but as far as the care of those particular areas that are defined and covered in the new definition, yes.
The care of it or ownership of it?
No,
Care of it.
in care of it.
Okay. To the curb of the street.
I believe we're saying that there might be, an area, say, in front of somebody's yard of a foot or two, might be a typical sort of thing that would be basically town property, town right-of-way. And if I understand it correctly, we're saying that the adjacent property owner would be responsible for taking care of that piece of property up to the sidewalk or the curb.
To the curb. And one thing I didn't point out a little bit earlier was that if the town has a section of sidewalk that does not adjoin a private owner, the town does maintain and mow that section. And there's a section in front of Veterans Memorial Park that we maintain and take care of, as well as elsewhere in town. That's just the one that comes to mind right off.
And whose responsibility is maintaining the sidewalk? Especially brick sidewalks.
I believe that would be the town's responsibility.
So it goes private, public, private.
Except for snow, and again, this is not the ordinance before you, but snow removal is a separate ordinance where the landowner would take care of snow removal on the sidewalk. But in terms of replacement of brick, replacement of concrete, you'll see Mr. Dew and his crews out periodically throughout the year that'll be making those upgrades and changes to the sidewalk.
So the folks who live up and down Valley Street are responsible for keeping the snow off the sidewalks in front of their houses?
Yes.
So if they bought a small excavator and actually knocked some brick out when they're trying to get the snow off, who would be responsible for putting that brick back? You think? I mean, there's all kinds of things. I mean, I worry about those kind of things.
Well, ultimately, town's going to take care of putting the sidewalk back together.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anybody doing that in the residential areas, so is that going to now become a
No,
town
actually,
ordinance?
we have sidewalk repair that's going on now.
Yeah, I mean,
What are we talking about?
snow removal.
But this ordinance doesn't cover that. Let's get back to what this ordinance covers. This ordinance, and I think Dr. Moore has raised the question that everybody wants to know the answer to is, Valley Street's a great example. There's a sidewalk, and then there's a little bit of grassy strip between the sidewalk and the road. This ordinance will make the property owner be in charge of mowing that little strip of land between the sidewalk and the road. Is that correct?
On what schedule? Once a week? Once a month?
Well, as
Once a
long as it
season?
doesn't get 10 inches, is it 10 inches? 10 inches high.
And then, if I read this correctly, there could be abatement costs that would be levied to the property owner from the town treasurer? And I'm assuming you, the town manager, would, or the code enforcer would make that
Yeah, the CJ.
Stipulation.
CJ would issue the necessary documentations to put it in motion. If it were not taken care of, then the town would have the authority to go in, make the repair, or mow the grass, and then issue a levy for the cost to the landowner for doing that.
So you put a vegetable garden in there, though, couldn't you? Take that grass out and put vegetables there, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it? If it belongs to you, if it is public, if it's yours, if it becomes private property, you have the access to it, so you can put tomatoes would be good on Valley Street.
Or
Vegas
Roundup
grass.
comes to mind.
Okay. Any other comments, sir?
I guess that answers my question.
Okay.
So you can maintain it as long as it doesn't get over 10 inches. So you can round up the whole thing and put into it.
This is the first reading of a proposed ordinance, Dr. Moore. It sounds like there's going to be some further discussion about the whole thing.
Yeah, but, it's,
Thanks for your time.
all right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council regarding this particular matter at the present time? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Elaine Everest. I'm not.
Okay, Ms. Everest, I'll ask you to come forward, please.
I didn't really come here for this evening, but I started thinking about it, and I thought.
And if you would state your address for the record.
104 Court Street is my business address, but I live on Sheffield Court in Abingdon, not in the town. So this isn't my fight. But, Mr. Humphreys, I agree with you. I mean, when you look at this, having a business in the town sort of puts me in way of liability with this, because the sidewalks are not well-maintained, and the grassy or vegetated areas are not well-maintained. So I don't really want the liability, and if I have to maintain it, what's in it for me? Do I get a consideration on my taxes, or what happens? I mean, it should have an ebb and flow, it seems to me. It should have a partnership.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't you all agree? I mean, it makes perfect sense to me.
We're working through this.
We're on the tomato thing.
I think the tomatoes are a capital idea.
All righty, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council regarding this particular matter at the present time? There does not appear to be anyone else present this evening who wishes to address the council regarding this matter at the present time. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. Council, I would welcome your thoughts on this particular matter. It seems to me to be something that might merit some further discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we refer this to a future work session.
Okay, it sounds like you're wanting to table it this evening. And
That's
refer
fine
it
too, if you want to add
to,
table in there, that'd be all right.
All right, and I'll bet we have a work session coming up in
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, and maybe that would be a good time. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion to table it this evening, and
I will second if no one seconded
it's been seconded. Thank you. We have a motion to table this until our July work session, and we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion about this?
I'm sorry that I disturbed all this, but I mean, it just seemed a matter of landowner rights. I'm sorry.
Well, I think there's several of us that have questions, and it's something that needs to be talked about and worked through. Clearly there's an issue to address, but there's a lot of implications to that that merit some, discussion. And
I'm sorry, CJ, back there also. So.
Yeah, you're doing a good job for us. Both you and Ms. Eisenhower.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the discussion tonight and place it on our mid-month work session. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Moore?
Aye. Item number 3, we have a public hearing coming up on environmental permit to seek, this is to seek public comment on a draft permit from the Department of Environmental Quality that will allow the release of treated wastewater into a body of water in Washington County, Virginia. Now, this may not be quite as ominous as it sounds, but I think is Ms. Sarita Moore here with us this evening? If you would come forward, please, and talk with us about this.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just one thing, because we referred this to the matter we just discussed to the work session. Could you please announce that work session, so if anybody wants to come to that and participate in that with us, that they could, or at least listen to us as we went through the making of sausage, as you often say.
Yes, sir. Ms. Rosenbaum, what is the date, please?
It'll be Wednesday, July the 17th.
Okay, and we will have that session. Normally, we have them in the downstairs meeting room, and all are
6:30?
Yes.
Yes, all are welcome to come and see us grind the sausage. Okay, Ms. Moore, please.
Mayor Morgan, council members. Yes, this is hopefully, much less, of a controversial issue. But in compliance with the Clean Water Act, the town of Abingdon has applied for reissuance of their VPDES permit, which is the Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit for the Wolf Creek Water Reclamation Facility. The applicant proposes to release treated wastewater into a water body at the rate of 4.95 million gallons per day. The water body being Wolf Creek. So on May 23rd, 2013, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality issued the draft permit for the release of the treated wastewater, and the public notice was published in the Bristol Herald Courier on June 17th. and this is the first public notice.
Okay, so if I'm correct, the town of Abingdon currently and has for many years operated the Wolf Creek Water Treatment Plant.
Correct.
Which I might add that we're quite proud of, a facility that uses the best technology available to treat wastewater in this area without using any chlorine and so forth.
Correct.
And so we're basically requesting a continuation of our permit that would enable us to operate that facility.
That is correct. Yes, we have to reissue, request a permit every 5 years. And a permit we are currently under expires September 20th, 2013.
Okay, and again, I would note that we're very proud of the facility, and it seems like we have one of the most modern facilities of its kind in this part of the world, and you are the director of that facility. So
I am.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I will, at the present time, open the public hearing, and again, the question, the town of Abingdon is seeking to renew its permit for operation of the Wolf Creek Water Treatment Plant. I should clarify that we are actually seeking a permit to discharge treated water into Wolf Creek. I suppose you could operate the plant in theory without doing that, but it would be very difficult. And
yes, it would.
Okay, and if you'll sit down for just a moment, please. All right, I will declare the public hearing to be open, and if there is anyone here this evening who wishes to address the council at the present time on this specific matter, they are welcome to come forward at this moment. There does not appear to be anyone who wishes to address the council on this specific matter. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. And I will ask our town manager and our town attorney if there is any specific action that is required by the council, or are we merely required to have this hearing?
Mr. Mayor, I believe authorization of me to re-execute any necessary permit documents would be in order.
I would entertain such a motion.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? All right, we've had our public hearing, and I've entertained a motion which has a second to authorize Mr. Kelly to exercise any documents or enter into any appropriate documents as required for this agreement. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk if Ms. Rosenbaum, she'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Barry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. We have one more public hearing this evening, and let's see if I can actually read this into the record and not lose my space. But what we have before us is a consideration of the proposed purchase of property, specifically tax maps number 18-6-12A1 and 18-6-12A2, 18-6-12A3, 1821-1, 1821-2, 18-21-3, 1821-4, 1821-5, 1821-11, 1821-13, 1821-14, 1821-15, and 1821-16, and she sells seashells by the seashore. Legal descriptions of this is the Old Town Village, Fugate Street, and Village Court, currently owned by New People's Bank. And this notice was given pursuant to the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, Section 15.2-1800. Mr. Kelly, if you will introduce us to this document, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public, this matter arose after the budget cycle began, wherein we had created our draft budget. A certain piece of property became available that adjoins the historic muster grounds, also provides access off of Colonial Road, and involves several lots of land. There was an appraisal done of this property. The appraised value was in excess of $135,000 for that property. Council back in May authorized me to enter into negotiations to try to acquire the property. I was successful in negotiating the price down from $139,000 down to $100,000 for the purchase of this property. It is anticipated that the use for this property would be to provide both an alternate entrance into the muster grounds off of Colonial Road and to provide adequate parking immediately adjacent to the muster grounds, and to also provide for a site for the relocation of the Breckenridge cabin, which the Washington County Library and the Washington County Board of Supervisors gave to the town several months ago. Based upon the way Hagee Street flows in, it dead ends, or it doesn't dead end, it makes a turn, but it heads straight in toward the muster grounds property. There are a couple of flat lots, a drainage detention basin on site, and everything is there that would be adequate with minimal grade work to establish both parking, location of the Breckenridge cabin, and to greatly enhance the muster grounds. It's my recommendation, subject to favorable outcome of the public hearing, that the town authorized me to purchase this property. We do have a purchase contract which calls for us to be in a position to purchase the property by July the 12th of 2013.
Mr. Kelly, have we budgeted for this, or where would the funds come from?
No, because this happened in mid-budget cycle, it would be necessary for council to appropriate the $100,000 out of reserves. Of course, in an upcoming borrowing, there is $2.6 million, which part of that money theoretically could be transferred to this. It will all close right about the same time, but I would ask that the council appropriate the $100,000 from reserves to purchase the property.
Okay. Again, this is a public hearing. The item before us, as Mr. Kelly has described, is essentially the property. It is the Old Town Village property, which has gone into receivership, and it is adjacent to the muster grounds, and council is entering into proposing to enter into a purchase agreement on this particular property. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be open, and if there is anyone present this evening who wishes to address council regarding this specific matter, they are welcome to come forward at the present time. Again, if there's anyone who wishes to address the council regarding this matter, they're welcome to come forward. There does not appear to be anyone who wishes to address the council regarding this specific matter. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. Council, what is your pleasure regarding this matter?
Mr. Mayor, it would be with great pleasure that I would like to make a motion that we authorize Mr. Kelly to enter into and execute any documents for the purchase of the said property and appropriate the monies from the reserves.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second to authorize our town manager to enter into the appropriate agreements to complete the sale or purchase of this property, and to take the fund for $100,000 to take the funding required from reserves. Is there discussion regarding this matter?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As everybody on council knows, I'm usually the anti-purchase property council member that doesn't think we need to own enough real estate. This piece of property, however, I think is very different from any piece of property in town. One of the issues we have at the mustering grounds is not that people don't want to use it, it's that they really don't have parking. The Over the Mountain organization and the DAR have done an excellent job in organizing events, more events than just the Over the Mountain Victory Trail. And in this situation, that looks like it was almost a godsend, because we have struggled since I have sat on this council as far as parking is concerned. So I was glad to see that we could find property that was adjacent for something, usually when somebody comes to the town of Abingdon and wants to sell something to them, they want to sell it to them for a little under $1 million. So I was very tickled to see that, and I do support it.
Other comments or questions? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Rosenbaum to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Moore?
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to that coming together. All right, there are no second readings of ordinances this evening or any bids to consider. That brings us to reports from our town manager. And our first report this evening under that section is a presentation by the Washington County Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. And we have Mr. Jordan Whitesides, who is project director or assistant project director at Highlands Community Services.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Whitesides, and I'm with the Washington County Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. We received funding in February 2012 from the Virginia Strategic Prevention Framework State Incentive Grant Project to identify and implement evidence-based strategies to reduce car crashes due to alcohol with the 18 to 24 age group. We were here back in November to present our project and to share our data through various surveys and focus groups. The purpose of this presentation is to update you all on our progress of our project and to share our 3 evidence-based strategies. First, I'd like to recap our data from the last presentation. At the end of Phase 1, we found the number 1 offender of alcohol-related crashes were males between the ages of 21 and 24. The majority of these crashes occurred during the months of July and December on Sunday mornings between 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. The majority of these crashes also occurred in the Monroe and Taylor districts. When we asked the target group why this is happening in Washington County, they said they did not see the risk of being caught from law enforcement. Phase 2 of this project is to implement our 3 strategies. Our first strategy is to increase sobriety checkpoints and saturation patrols by developing partnerships with the Washington County Sheriff's Office and the Damascus Police Department. Each department will do 4 additional saturation patrols around the Monroe and Taylor districts in the months of July and December. Our next strategy is to implement a county-wide media campaign that will focus on legal consequences. We have partnered with Code and Creative in Glade Spring to help us launch our campaign. We are currently in the process of holding focus groups with our target group to develop a key message. We are also getting their input of how and where this message should be implemented. Our final strategy is to implement an interactive web-based surveys to motivate students to reduce alcohol use in our local colleges. This will also educate college students regarding health risk and other related consequences to binge drinking. This concludes our 3 strategies. We are very excited to be implementing these in the next couple of months. Thank you for letting us come and give you an update tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. We appreciate your efforts, and it's certainly a serious problem, and I'm very glad that you folks are addressing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see if I can get back on target here. All right, our next item, let's see, we have authorization of the town manager to enter into a temporary construction easement between Stephen H. Smith and Charles P. Smith relative to the replacement of the trestle number 7 on the Virginia Creeper Trail. Mr. Kelly, would you care to bring us up to speed on this, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public, we have been doing some extensive work to try to get the Creeper Trail 7 trestle put back in place. That's the trestle that was destroyed by the tornado a couple of years ago. We're in the process now and have the contractors on board to begin construction at any time. The remaining piece to the puzzle is the easement between the landowners, Charles and Stephen Smith, relative to giving us a temporary construction easement at that location. We have presented them with modified versions of a draft easement. I believe Ms. Eisenhower's been working with them up up until the beginning of the council meeting this evening to try to get this in place. Ordinarily, I simply accept easements that are given to the town. However, there are some very detailed, lengthy covenants, if you will, within this particular draft that the Smith brothers have requested be put in there. It is, in terms of the financial obligation within the easement, something that is within the budget of the project. And there are various concerns over right of use and providing refencing to certain areas. I believe council at the meeting that we visited the farm became aware of those concerns that they expressed to us. I'm in a position to execute the draft that Ms. Eisenhower has prepared, provided that we can get the Smith brothers to sign off on that easement, and as soon as the easement is signed off on, we will be in a position to begin construction immediately. So with that said, I would like council to authorize me to enter into the easement with the Smith brothers based upon Ms. Eisenhower's recommendation to do the same.
Okay.
After they sign it.
So is this, and I'm sorry I wasn't here, but I guess I need to ask, is this draft is what they agreed to verbally?
They had the draft that is in your packet, and Ms. Eisenhower has made some minor modifications. They're nothing of real substance that she's made today to what you have, just a little tweaking in terms of the language. But if the Smith brothers are prepared to sign, then I'm prepared to accept on behalf of the town. But I do think, given the complexities, I've never executed an easement with this many covenants and restrictions and what have you. I believe that I would prefer the council to authorize me to execute that document.
And I believe you're telling us that there's nothing there that we can't live with.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there any questions or discussion about this? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, go ahead and authorize Mr. Kelly to execute this easement as soon as the Smith brothers do sign.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize our town manager to enter into this agreement as soon as obtains the necessary signatures from the Smith brothers. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye, thank you. Item number 3 is an authorization for our town manager to enter into negotiations with the CHA company to contract for the design and engineering services for the Urban Pathway Project. Again, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if you'll recall, we did an RFP to obtain proposals from various companies regarding the Urban Pathway Project. I believe we received approximately 8 submittals. Of those, we agreed to interview 4. A selection committee of town staff and 1 council member was selected to be involved in reviewing those proposals. After extensive review, ranking, and formal interviews, it was the committee's recommendation that we pick a company by the name of CHA Design Construction Solutions for us to begin negotiating a contract for the engineering design services of the same. CHA, while you may not be familiar with the name, is, I believe, formerly Olver. Is that correct, Mr. Smith?
Yes, they are the parent company of Olver.
Okay, parent company of Olver, and the town has had extensive experience in the use of Olver with the upgrades to our wastewater treatment facility. The staff that is on board with this proposal was staff that actually helped us in crafting the application and helping us to obtain the necessary funding for the project. And I might ask Mr. Garrett, if Mr. Jackson, if he would make a little comment about the funding for this project.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, the staff involved was formerly with Anderson and Associates, helped us write the proposal
Anderson or Anderson?
Anderson and Associates. Did I say Anderson? Sorry. That gentleman now works for CHA as a project manager, and he helped me and my staff write the grant applications to VDOT for the funding. First go around, we received $380,000, which was the most VDOT had ever put toward any project involving sidewalks and whatnot. And this was a very innovative approach for them as far as pedestrian safety. And then we submitted one sort of last minute back in the early spring, you may recall. And just recently, last week or week and a half ago, received an announcement that we received $201,000 in addition to that for the final cost of at least 2 phases of that project. So the interviews went very well. The firm presented a lot of design aspects that we could probably go with. There's some other issues we'd like for them to address, or whoever we end up working with. But they seem to have had a good feeling for what the town wanted to have, where it wanted things, and had really done their homework on the ground. So.
Very good. Council, what's your pleasure regarding this?
I was on a committee, and they did stand out as I think our best firm, and I think we need to go ahead and engage in negotiations with this firm.
That sounds like a motion to me.
Second.
Okay. All right. I believe we have a motion to enter into negotiations with CHA for the proposed urban pathway project, or the design thereof, and we have a second. Are there other comments or discussion about this matter? Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk, Ms. Rosenbaum, if she'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. Our next item is authorization of our town manager to execute contracts between the town of Abingdon, Department of Housing and Community Development, and King's School of Medicine relative to the $250,000 appropriation from the Virginia General Assembly and the $50,000 previously appropriated by the town of Abingdon for use by the King's School of Medicine. Mr. Kelly, bring us up to date on this, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, approximately a week ago, town staff and I met with representatives from DHCD, from the Tobacco Commission, also from DHCD staff out of Richmond, Denise Ambrose, as well as Tarek Zaidi, the individual who is heading up the King School of Medicine at the present time. A while back, if you will recall, the General Assembly appropriated $250,000 for use in the development of the King School of Medicine. However, they appropriated that funding to the town of Abingdon. As a result, DHCD is involved in the administration of that funding and required contracts between town of Abingdon, DHCD, and King School of Medicine relative to how the funds would be paid out. Likewise, the folks from the Tobacco Commission, Sarah Williams, had indicated that they felt, and as did Jimmy Wallace from DHCD, that they felt a strong need for the town to have a separate agreement with King School of Medicine on the $50,000 previously appropriated by the town, just to ensure that the King School of Medicine was adequately accounting for the use of the funds in terms of being able to draw down the money from the General Assembly. As a result, we worked around the table and put together a contract between DHCD, Town of Abingdon, King School of Medicine relative to the use of the $250,000. And then Ms. Eisenhower along with Jimmy Wallace and Tarek Zadie, put together a separate instrument relative to the use of $50,000. The real gist of both agreements is that there was a strong indication, well, it wasn't a strong indication, it was a definite requirement that the Virginia State procurement policies and procedures had to be followed in the use of this funding. It was recommended that the town refer the procurement issues to the King School of Medicine, and that a selection committee be created by the King School of Medicine consisting of one council member, King School of Medicine staff, and perhaps a Town of Abingdon staff to ensure that the proper procedures of procurement were being followed throughout the process. So what you have before you are two agreements for authorization for me to execute. Both me and Mrs. Eisenhower have reviewed those documents, and we find them to be in good legal order and of no detriment to the town of Abingdon.
So it appears that basically what we're describing is a series of documents have been created which would provide for appropriate accounting of the funding and so forth, and making sure that the funds are used and procurement practices are used within state law, and that the public and taxpayers' interests are basically protected in this procedure. Is that a correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure regarding this? I'd entertain a motion about this matter.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the town manager to execute the agreement between the town of Abingdon and DHCD. Further move that we authorize the town manager also to execute the agreement between the town of Abingdon and the King School of Medicine.
Okay. Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, if you'll call the roll, please, Ms. Rosenbaum.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Barry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you. The next item is the passage of a resolution. This is in follow-up to the public hearing we had at our last month's meeting. And this will be a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2,600,000, and providing for the form, details, and payment of the bonds, and authorizing certain related actions. Mr. Kelly, if you'll remind us all again how we're proceeding on this, how the money, for what purposes the money would be used, and how you propose to proceed.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you are accurate. We did have the public hearing at the last council meeting based upon our bond council's recommendation. The resolution is a necessary requirement to be able to close out on those loaned funds. I will state that $2.6 million is being used, and this will help Ms. Rosenbaum in cleaning up the minutes there. But the $2.6 million figure price tag is broken down as follows. There was a significant economic development issue in the town of Abingdon, for which the town of Abingdon and Washington County agreed to provide certain incentive to KVAT to locate its corporate headquarters in the old Johnson Memorial Hospital building. Of that $2.6 million, $1 million is to go to KVAT for that purpose. In addition, there were various tax abatement incentives relative to the increased value of the property and the assessments. The remaining $1.6 million, and I'll try to get this correct, was broken down as follows, and this was gone over as we were going through the budget process. But there are some electronic upgrades in both the police department and finance department. I don't see Mr. Godby here yet. He's still working with our consultant on the financial upgrades as we speak. Those totaled $195,000. It will make both issues relative to the police and the finance department much more efficient. The upgrades to the police were to provide some computer systems within each of the automobiles. There are some significant renovations and repairs to the Coombs Center. We have a boiler issue, a pool lining issue, a roof issue, and structural repairs that total $445,000. There are some town historic property upgrades and constructions of a new building to house trolleys, which total $250,000. And then the remaining portion for pedestrian improvements, the pedestrian improvement project at the Whites Mill Road, Court Street, and Oak Hill Street area, the town's portion $550,000, as well as an appropriation for the Academy Drive widening project, which has to take place of $160,000. I will point out that relative to those pedestrian improvement projects and the Academy Drive widening project, that there are additional funds in place, both from reserve money that's in the budget and from VDOT revenue sharing funds, which make up the difference of that. If you total those things up, that gives you 1.6 plus the million for KBAT, and that's $2.6 million. All those have been blessed and approved by our bond council.
Okay, and if I understand it correctly, if we pass the resolution that has been presented to us tonight, we would authorize the sale of these bonds?
Yes, and what I would point out within the resolution is that, of course, a request for proposal of bidding went out to various banks, and I believe there were a total of 5 submitted. The low rate that we received was Carter Bank, and that rate was 2.5% amortized over a 15-year period of time. I will be meeting with our bond counsel to handle the closing, which should take place prior to July the 10th. And we will also be meeting with our financial consultants to analyze this, along with some other upcoming things, to make some recommendations in terms of what's the best approach for some financial restructuring to make some of the larger projects that we want to happen be able to happen.
Mr. Kelly, we're limited under state law to the amount of bonded indebtedness that we could, as a municipality, are permitted to enter into. I believe we can borrow up to 10% of the assessed value of the real estate within the boundaries of the town of Abingdon. This does not present any problem in that regard.
No, in fact, Mr. Mayor, and I think I made this comment at the last meeting when we had the public hearing, but basically right now with the debt that the town currently has, we are about at a 1% threshold of that which we could borrow. So the town is in very good financial position regarding its debt service. Now, I will point out that we do have a $12 million loan with the wastewater plant, but 0% interest.
Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you. Council, do you have any questions, or is there any discussion about this matter? Okay, I'll entertain a motion regarding this matter. We do have a resolution before us, and an appropriate motion might be to adopt the resolution as presented.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2.6 million and providing for the form, details, and payment of the bonds and authorizing certain related actions.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
And award it to Carter Bank.
And subject to negotiations, awarded to Carter Bank.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to award the sale or the purchase of these bonds to Carter Bank, and to adopt the resolution as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, if you'll call the roll, please, Ms. Rosenbaum.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of items that are listed under unfinished business. These are a series of updates. At least three of them we heard, a presentation on during our work session. I see Mr. Dew thinks he's
Mr. Unfinished Business.
You got it.
That's your name. That's your name.
But you have very difficult business to finish, but
Thank
you
you
do
for
get
coming
some of it
forward.
finished,
Yeah.
and I would note that, and it gets finished very well. But I'll bet you can
Thank you.
give us an update on the replacement of trestle number 7 on the Virginia Creeper Trail.
I would be more than happy to. I'm delighted to hear the discussion that went on earlier about the easement. As soon as we get this easement signed, we will be able to give the contractor the official notice to proceed, and he has actually, along with the cooperation of the Smith brothers, been able to get some preliminary surveying work and some fence work done out there. So I really feel like we're going to be able to hit the ground running on that project as soon as we get the easement signed. So ready to go.
Okay, and it is hoped that this will be finished by...
The contract is for a total of 8 months, but there is a pretty good chance that if conditions, weather conditions especially, are favorable, that it could get done before then. But I'll keep my fingers crossed, but the contractor does have 8 months.
Very good, and we will be able to keep the trail open while the work is underway.
That is our full intention. We do have some stipulations in the contract that for the safety of both the trail users and the employees of the contractor, there may be some temporary shutdowns, hopefully not anything lengthy, but we will be sure and give everyone concerned plenty of notice if there is going to be any closing.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask a question. When you do give the notice, Mr. Dew, about how long prior to it do you hope to have the notice out? I know as soon as you can, but, especially like the bike shops and people like that are going to want to know. And
The notice for the construction to start?
No, in case you have closure.
Okay.
And I know that particularly the bike shops are really, really going to know about the closures. And also probably people like the Martha Washington Inn and some of the other people are going to, so that they of course, they have a shuttle service there.
Sure.
But just so that they can tell their people who be coming and staying with them whether or not that they can ride the whole trail.
We have, and I'm going on memory here when the contract was written, but I believe it was 5 to 7 days notice for a request, and that's just for a request for closure. So if given that amount of leeway or time by the contractor, we'll get word out within the next day to all the interested parties.
Yeah, do you think do we have a system of, interested parties that we send out to, or how you?
We do have a list,
No,
yes.
okay,
We do
yeah.
have a list, and if, we'll certainly, I think we have discussions with Kevin and some of the shuttle providers to know who's on that list. If there's anybody else we need to add to it, we'd be glad to.
Yeah, I really do believe that a lot of the people, and I don't want to put undue burden on you all, but like a lot of the people who have lodgings and like the inn and different places like that are going to want to know, because a lot of the people will start on this inn and head out, and they'll start in Abingdon and ride to Damascus, and so that would preclude that.
Well, one of the things we also want to do besides just notify the shuttle providers and some of the other key players is to post signs at some of the trailheads, some of the major trailheads, to give that very warning as well.
Do you think there could be like a website listed or a telephone number they could dial just to make sure that it is open or closed?
Well, we would certainly put it on all of our media outlets, which includes the town website and the Facebook and Twitter page as well.
Good.
We could try to coordinate something with the Creeper Trail Club, maybe to go on their website.
And the tourism department.
Yeah, so Kevin said he'd be glad to. So that'd be really good. Thank you all.
Mr. Mayor, one of the Chamber of Commerce, they could send out a blast too, so.
Okay.
That would get a lot of the B&Bs and bike shops and so forth.
And it may be a little bit short notice, but it would be nice to have a groundbreaking for this, considering the scope of the project.
Yeah, I think that's still very, very possible we can do that.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much. And see, you are getting some
Yes,
stuff finished here, and thank you so much for your effort on that.
The do's done.
Yeah, all righty. Okay, Mr. Jackson, do you have anything else to add on the Urban Pathways project?
You all just approved us to begin negotiations, that's all I have to say.
All right, glad to hear that we're moving forward. Thank you very much. That brings us to matters not on the agenda. I do know that there is one item in particular tonight,
Speak a little louder. Most of the Kathy, hear her, but the rest of
I don't know what that says, but
I don't doubt that murder needs a bit.
she speaks good, but the rest of you mumble jumbo.
all righty, well, we will try to move beyond the mumbo jumbo here.
Hear about the updates on the white field. Did y'all cover that in the work session?
We did, but by golly, since you're here and you've waited this long and had to listen to so much mumbo jumbo, I think, Mr. Dew, if you would give us an update on the Whitesville sidewalk project, I think it's the least we can do. And can you hear him back there, sir?
Am I speaking clearly enough? Okay.
All righty.
For the Whitesville project, we discussed it in the work session earlier. We're continuing the process of trying to gain all the necessary easements. We've mentioned before that because of the VDOT funding involved in this project, we can't proceed with any of the construction until we've obtained all of the easements. We're currently about 8 easements short, but we only consider 3 of those truly challenging, with some issues still remaining with those 3 property owners. The town attorney and her assistant and myself are going to be doing some face-to-face meetings this week to try to move further along with those easements. And that's where we stand. That's what's standing between us and starting construction on that one.
So it seems to be moving forward, and
It's definitely moving forward.
definitely just a couple of easements away from getting it done. Mr. Neese, do you have any questions about this while we're here?
Me and a lot of people, this has been going on 3 or 4 years. And a lot of people wondering what you're doing or why you ain't doing it. That's too long a time to do it. I think it's 3 to 4 years ago, the council approved it, put the money aside. Now here, if y'all do all your business like the sidewalk Whitesville Road, the town will be in hell of shape.
Well,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Y'all know it.
Thank you. I'm happy to address that. And I see Ms. Robinson is with us this evening from the Bristol Herald Courier. There was a letter from a disgruntled citizen that appeared in the newspaper a few months ago who asked the question of how complicated is it to build a sidewalk? Why can't you get it done? And I've had quite an education over the last few years of how complicated it is to retrofit a neighborhood for a sidewalk. And there's so many things that make this terribly complicated and expensive. First of all, we have to have engineering and design work that is required by law, to make these, sidewalks be put in the proper place and to be safely done. There are also legal easements that are required for us to go on to private property to actually, perhaps in some cases, get permission from the landowner to use a certain amount of their property to put the sidewalk in place or to temporarily be on their property while we are actually constructing it. And I think there's 25 or 30 different property owners that have been involved with this so far that we've had to get all these people to agree to legally allow us to be on their property, to either build the sidewalk or to be on their property at that time. Then we have the issues of all the trees that are, in the right-of-way of where that sidewalk is going to go. They have to be relocated and moved. Then we have the issue of all the electrical poles that are in there that are the property of Appalachian Power Company. Appalachian Power is pretty well determined that they're going to move the electric poles themselves, and they'll get around to moving it when it fits into their particular schedule. And yes, you can pay them for moving that pole as well. you know, I'm sorry?
Stormwater.
There was stormwater management and so forth, and a whole series of legal agreements that are involved, and then there's, you know, setting aside the money for it. And I have to agree, Mr. Neese, it's a very frustrating project, you know, that it takes so long to get something like this done, but I'm not quite through. But the reality of it is a thoroughly complicated matter to actually, you know, construct a sidewalk in a neighborhood that already exists, particularly when we're looking at the scale that is involved right now. The reality of it is that council, you know, makes a point when a new development is put in to have those landowners put in the sidewalk at the landowners or at the developer's expense. But it is a terribly expensive process to put sidewalks in. But I am pleased to tell you that it actually is going to happen. And you can count on it, that we are very close to actually having construction begin on the sidewalks out there on Whites Mill Road and the other areas. And I think we're actually going to live to see it. And I'll let you have another turn.
What you're saying, I understand it, but about 2 months ago, Dad came by, I signed an easement. 3 years, that's the first time anybody asked me to do it. So it's a known fact, you're dragging your feet, somebody is. You're not really caring whether you do it or not, or something. I mean,
Well,
everybody knows you're just dragging it out, using the money for something else.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Neese. I appreciate you coming, and I'm sorry we've disappointed you in that regard. But
Not only me, but other people.
I'm sorry we disappointed many people in that regard, but I think with a little bit of continued persistence on the part of our staff, we will actually live to see these sidewalks come together. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
that is if we get the other 8 people to sign. And the 8 people right now are holding up as much as anyone else.
And I think Ms. Eisenhower would be happy to give you a list of those folks and allow you to make calls with them or go visit them yourself and encourage them to help us move this forward.
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
just one comment. I've heard from Mr. Neese and many of the property owners, and I think this is one of these issues of, you know, who's on first base and who's heading to second, and what are the expectations of the town staff, the people working on it, and then the citizens who's heard us talk about funding it for 3 years now. And we've somewhat inflated our budget, and the money's rolled and rolled and rolled. So I understand what Mr. Neese is saying, and I think the reality is anytime we appropriate funds as a council and we develop a plan to execute for our staff, we've got to communicate that. So I think it's kind of one of those of communication, expectations, and everything else you said, Mr. Mayor. So it's a little bit of all that wrapped in, and, you know, I guess at some point, all I would ask of our staff is we get close, it's really a legal issue, when we get close, can we come up with a schedule of when we think we're going to turn over the first bit of sidewalk and move forward? So I think we need to do that for the citizens who care about it.
And, you know, the other thing that I'll point out is that, you know, we try, if possible, to obtain funding for these major projects through sources other than straight town of Abingdon taxpayer money. We've raised a lot of money through the Virginia Department of Transportation. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Dew, how much money is the state of Virginia putting into this?
Into this project?
Yes.
Whites Mill?
Yes.
Close to $800,000.
Okay, so that's money that's not coming from the town of Abingdon taxpayers directly.
Mr. Neese might not have been able to hear.
Did you hear that, Mr. Neese?
Yeah, I heard a bit of it.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other comments regarding this matter? Okay, thank you. We have at least one other item that is not on the agenda this evening, and that is a conference that is being coordinated by the Appalachian School of Law. It is the governor's first biennial Natural Resources and Energy Law Symposium. We've been asked to spend some money on that we could have used on sidewalks. We've been asked to be a sponsor for that. What's your pleasure regarding this matter, Council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we appropriate $2,500 towards sponsorship of the Natural Resources and Energy Law Symposium to be September the 23rd, 2013, in the town of Abingdon, Virginia. This is the governor's first initiative focusing on alternative energies, and those funds to be from our council contingency.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to allocate $2,500 from, I believe, council contingencies for this purpose. And I would point out that the Appalachian School of Law has brought in a number of nationally known speakers for this event. I think it will bring a significant number of folks into the town, as well as addressing, a topic of great concern in our part of the world. Any further discussion? Hearing none, if our clerk will call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Barry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Moore?
Aye. Okay. Is there anyone present with us this evening that wishes to address the council on a specific matter? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Everest, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Thank you. It's me again. My name is Elaine Everest.
I'm a resident of Abingdon, and I have a business at 104 Court Street. I've had it since the year 2004. I had actually contacted 3 people and made an appointment so that I could be on this evening's agenda, and I'm not on the agenda, which disappoints me, but nevertheless, I appreciate being recognized. Frequently, I've taken a lot of notes here, and I hope you'll be patient with me, but I've waited a long time, too, to say this. The town decides to close Court Street for reasons and activities that are meant to attract people to the town. The reason I'm here today is the recent closure of Court Street on Plum Alley Day. I understand Plum Alley Day is important, but not only was Plum Alley closed, all of Court Street was closed, and the town okayed the placement of 2 inflatable rides directly in front of my shop, complete with 2 loud generators. There was no notification, there was no 5 to 7 day notice that Court Street would be closed, nor that there would be inflatable rides with loud generators directly in front of my shop. There was not even a notice from the Kiwanis that this would occur. I'm sorry. At any rate, there are at present 2 viable businesses on Court Street between Main and Valley, myself and Easterly Coleman. Not only were myself and my employees told that we could not access our own parking lot that morning, but because I didn't know that this was going to happen, I had scheduled a fixture delivery for that Saturday morning. Because it is not a court day and parking should be available for a truck from North Carolina. Consequently, because of the closure, we carried fixtures for 3 blocks. Although I cannot speak for Susan, the owner of Easterly Coleman, she told me that the same thing happened to her delivery driver that day. A dining room set was set to be delivered that day and had to be carried 3 blocks to be loaded on her truck because she could not access her own street. There was no access permitted on a block with 2 viable businesses who were attempting to conduct business that day. I cannot comprehend why council would allow the Kiwanis to make a unilateral decision to close down Court Street and install noisy generators when it's well known and clearly posted that we conduct business on Saturdays. I support the Kiwanis charitable efforts. My husband and I might actively support several charities. However, a portion of my rent is dedicated to my usage of our parking lot. It's private property. Obviously, if our customers cannot get to us, we don't generate revenue, but incur the cost of operating, including payroll of our employees. I certainly have no desire to engage the town of Abingdon or the Kiwanis in a heated debate, but certainly there must be a better location for the closure of a street, inflatable rides, generators, and all the lovely accoutrement that goes along with this. Intelligent people should be able to find a satisfactory solution that does not compromise the business of doing business in Abingdon. I would like an assurance from this council and the mayor that the presence of businesses and shops and commerce in this town are a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, and let me make a couple of comments. First of all, to say that I regret that you were not on the agenda. You and I have met and we've discussed these issues, and you specifically told me that you wanted to be on the July agenda, and I'll have to take some responsibility for not getting that communicated to our clerk and to other parties involved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, you're welcome. I do want to assure you that we are very concerned about the businesses in our community. Your business is very valued here, and it's a great addition to our town. I was pleased to have the opportunity to meet with you, several Saturdays ago after the event. I thought a number of the points that you raised were quite valid, and I've been in contact with Mr. Kelly about this and some others as well, and I'm pretty confident that, that I am hopeful that there will be a Plum Alley Day again next year, but I do believe that we can do a better job of planning and coordinating certain aspects of this than perhaps we did this year. And again, we're very mindful of the the issues that you raise. People do need to have access to your store. You do need to have a reasonably, quiet environment under the circumstances, and people need to have access to your facility. Mr. Kelly, would you care to comment at this time?
Sure. I had occasion to speak with Ms. Everest by telephone, and my understanding, I'll apologize as well for you not being on the agenda. My understanding was you wanted to be on last month's agenda, and we were having that in the works, and then I think the mayor went to visit you, so I do apologize.
I don't mean to interrupt, but when I contacted y'all, you told me that I didn't give you enough notice to be on the agenda for last month,
right,
which was probably just as well because I had a pretty good head of steam going at that point.
Well, as I recall in our conversation, you did, and that's fine. That's part of getting to the bottom of certain issues sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm respectful and appreciate that you bring those things to our attention, but we were going to make exceptions and get you in a position to be able to voice your concern one way or the other. I did pass it along as soon as I hung up the phone with you. I think I called the mayor and let him know that or actually I sent it out in the manager's report to the entire body of the council to let them know that there were certain issues. I do think that there's a better way that it can be done and better way to get the Kiwanis Club and the town staff on board and trying to figure out an alternate solution that will accommodate both the needs of having what I'll call a wonderful day in Abingdon for Plum Alley Day, and also being able to keep your business up and operating. So some of the things that we talked about in our phone conversation was moving the inflatables to a different street location, or even moving them further down Court Street and being able to provide access. We will have those conversations with the Kiwanis Club next year in greater detail. Generally, we tell them that they're to provide notifications to all the impacted and affected businesses, and you can rest assured we'll have those conversations with them, and we'll work with you. I'll probably personally call you and let you know what's going on.
Is it possible for me to be present in any of those dialogues? Because I certainly do have a vested interest. This is my feeling about it. Am I allowed to have a conversation with y'all right now? Thank you, Kathy. The thing is, there are a number of businesses that have moved to the Court Street Hill or are presently moving to Court Street Hill right now, and I've encouraged them to be there. When businesses see a successful business in a particular spot, they're excited as well, and they want to be there. It's nice to think that there are things that bring tourists to town, and tourists bring tourist dollars. When tourists come to town, they spend money. And the primary things that attract tourists to town are the Barter Theater, shopping, restaurants, the Martha Washington. The other things are lovely, but they don't generate the dollars, and the dollars are what makes everything tick. And
the Creeper Trail does.
The Creeper Trail does as well, yes. But when I ask people when they come into my shop, what brought you here? What attracted you to Abingdon? Tell me a little bit about yourself. I love a dialogue with people, and most of them tell me, I'm here for Barter Theater, we're here for the restaurants. There are some that do say Creeper Trail. They like the Creeper Trail, but shopping is what people do. Eating at restaurants is what people do. They like to show off the Martha Washington because it's truly a gem in our town. And the Barter Theater, everyone knows it all over the world. But my point is, if I'd like to make sure that there is cooperation with the Kiwanis and with the town and so on. I talked with the president of the Kiwanis Club that day, who told me that the reason that they put it on Court Street was because it was wider than the other streets. And to me, that said, I give you no consideration whatsoever. It's for our convenience that we're here, not yours. And I support their charitable dedications, but by the same token, at the end of the day, it's the dollars and cents that are brought into the town that make the town work.
Ms. Everest, I guess I just have a question. I wasn't here when Plum Alley Day was going on, so I don't really know, where things were. But if, let's just say, if, the town management starts a dialogue with Kiwanis now, would you be opposed to the end of Court Street from Valley up to Plum Alley? Would you be opposed to that being closed?
That doesn't present a problem, but there are many streets that are perpendicular to Valley and Main Street. There are dozens of them that all run the whole length of Plum Alley, that people could enjoy bouncing on bouncy rides. I don't understand the thrill of it, but what can I say? There are lots and lots of them. They could do Pecan, they could do Church. There are a number of them.
Right. You're correct, and we can work out.
And I would like to just make one comment, because I can tell you, what we might want to do is try to have a dialogue with the Kiwanis Club to stop everything at Court Street, not go any further down the street. And the reason being is, there's a certain safety issue that it presents not having that street blocked off. I would refer you to the Damascus debacle, as somebody pulled in and ran over people. Someone coming off of Court Street, or coming off Main Street, using Court Street to go to Valley, maybe someone that is mentally incapacitated, maybe an older driver that gets confused, like over in Damascus, could run over every one of those people coming down through there if you don't block that whole street off, even if you don't do the bouncy rides. And so I would suggest that Kiwanis Club stop it right there behind the courthouse and not have anything further that way. And I think that way that you could allow for the safety concerns, so we don't get someone to run over down through there. The other thing is I wanted to ask you, because I don't know, I'll play ignorant, is that I was wondering where your parking lot is, that you could get access to.
Our parking lot access is on Court Street. It's a shop called Persnickety.
No, I know where you are. If you don't remember me, but I did Midtown Madness and did all the work to bring Midtown Madness to do all that. So anyway, but I just don't know where your parking lot is. Is it Lou Dean's office?
Lou Dean's office, yes. It sits upward of Lou Dean's office, and that really is the parking lot. It belongs to those buildings. That parking lot is that private property. Lou Dean uses it at the grace of Helena Shoup, but it is the parking lot for Easterly, Coleman, and Persnickety.
See, I've never seen the signage on it that said that, so that's why I was confused of where the parking was, only on Street. Because I know several employees and stuff, and a lot of them park on Street right there.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Mr. Howard, Mr. Berry, either one of you folks care to comment about this?
I was at Plum Alley and saw the mayor's email to us and the town managers, and, just think about it. I think Mr. Humphreys has some good comments, but I would just, Greg, you said you're going to meet with the shop owners and Kiwanis. I think a dialogue with all the owners and the president of Kiwanis early next year would probably be a good thing.
It's not a nice idea.
And the other, I was just sitting here thinking, this is the first year I remember the big bouncy houses, and it's for the kids. Us adults.
They had it last year.
Did they have it last year? I think I was out of town.
They didn't have it on Court Street last year. I don't know where they
I would look at maybe
I disagree with you. I was there.
On Court Street?
One of my grandsons went down the slide.
Well, they might have gone down the slide further, but their generator was at my front door this year for the first time.
But just one comment I would add is maybe have it in the parking lot of the courthouse instead of on the street, and that would be away from your business. But for what it's worth, that's
marvelous idea.
All right, anybody else?
That's all.
I want to thank you for coming. We are taking this seriously. We thank you, for doing business in the town of Abingdon.
Thank you.
And, and you have pointed out one thing that I think we're very pleased about, and that is the renaissance of businesses taking place right there in the intersection of Court and Main. We have new restaurants, new stores that are opening. Magnolias and Figueretto's. Shady Business. Good things are happening there, and we want to be supportive of that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
As a matter of fact,
Thank you for coming.
I was told one night this past week that the person that bought the Elliott building, have they come to the town for an application yet? They are supposed. Tony says he's going to put the first loft apartments on Main Street.
Also, Duke Egley's moving up to that part of town, too. So
Very good.
So we're excited.
Good
Thank you very much.
Things happening. Thank you. All right, is there anyone else here this evening, Mr. Macbeth?
I just got a question. On this zoning thing with, on Empire Drive, when I was reading in here on Rick Macbeth at 1139 Panorama Drive, Abingdon, which is in that subdivision, it still says it's going to be zone office and industrial district, which is staying that way. According to this, is proposed subdivision includes extending existing entrance off Empire Drive. And the quote that I got from me is, the proposed use according to this final plat is yet to be determined. So what are they going to do with, they're subdividing that plot, was going to be put some business in there. Now they're subdividing, my understanding was going to be residential. Now, that's not a walk. Is that going to be rezoned as residential, or is that?
Mr. Jackson, would you care to comment on this?
There's been no discussion with the property owner as far as use. They did subdivide, ask for subdivision within the zone that they have, but they could certainly come back at any time and rezone that to residential. But there's been no discussion at this time.
But is there, did we know what their desires are?
No, they were just simply asking for a subdivision of the property as it is.
Okay, so it could be apartment complexes, it could be like it is over on the other side?
No, sir, not necessarily.
Those aren't allowed in that particular zone. So.
I just want to, just ask them the questions, that's all.
Office and institutional does include single-family dwellings and townhouses, but not apartment complexes.
Yeah, I know that. It's the same thing that happened behind us on the other end.
Not really. What it's zoned currently would only allow a single-family house, which you live in, or a townhouse, which could be a duplex.
OI does that?
What's that?
OI?
O&I, yes.
OI,
It wouldn't allow
office in an industrial district.
Office and
institutional
district.
It doesn't allow multifamily apartment housing or anything like that.
Okay.
And that's, the request was for a variance, and Mr. Smith had all of those stipulations that Mr. Jackson read into the, and so, I mean, that's why I asked the property owner if he understood the stipulations, is because those are some, you know, those give the planning department and the public works department control of the streets and sidewalks, actually, you know, traffic.
We don't have sidewalks there.
If somebody subdivides, they have to build it, right?
We like to have gas up there is what we were rather.
All right.
All right, well, that's the question I have, because I know it was, I heard that it was going to be, tried to be subdivided, but my understanding was more residential than, this looks like it still could be business.
Yes, sir, it could be, you know, there are a variety of...
Which it depends, you know.
Yeah. There are certain uses permitted by right within, you know, areas zoned as office and institutional. But, you know, again, Mr. Jackson has stated that, you know, apartment buildings and so forth are not part of that, but there could be other businesses that could locate there.
We still have that problem on Empire Drive.
Yes, sir, you do.
That it's gotten worse, and we still, you know, we're just not in limbo land out there. So, not dropping that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council this evening on matters that are not on the, specifically on the agenda? Okay. Moving forward, that brings us to an appointment tonight for the Planning Commission. We have an appointment available to appoint a member of the Planning Commission to fill the expired term of Dr. Ramsey White, who was not eligible for reappointment. And we had tabled this from our June 3rd, 2013 meeting. Council, I would entertain a motion regarding this matter.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that we appoint Wayne Craig on the Planning Commission to fill that expired term of Dr. Ramsey White.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Wayne Craig to fill the expired position that was previously held by Dr. Ramsey White. Any further discussion on this matter? If our clerk will call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morton?
Aye. We have an appointment to the District 3 Governmental Cooperative, appointment of a council member to fill the annual term on the District 3 Government Cooperative Board. The position is currently held by by Bob Howard, who was a council member. I believe you're actually chairing that board at the time.
That is true.
Well, they requested his reappointment. Therefore, I move that we reappoint Mr. Howard to District 3.
And Mr. Humphreys is the
And Mr.
alternate.
Humphreys as the alternate.
We have a motion to reappoint Mr. Howard to that,
Second.
and a second. And again, Mr. Humphreys would serve as the alternate. Any further discussion? Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mr. Howard?
No, abstain.
Okay. Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Council member reports. Mr. Humphreys, I bet you've got a couple things to bring us up to.
Don't have as many as I had last night. There were a couple others I had before I came in. The main one was already been talked about. But one of the things we've talked about is communication and being able to get people out to vote, getting people out to, or being involved if there's weather that looks like it is going to turn harmful. And one of the things that we were offered back when we were talking about, was it with Charter, the Charter that we did the TV franchise approval of, that they have a channel for us waiting. And I know if anybody will turn on Charter to Channel 3, Marion has a channel up and going. And all the Marion things go on, from trash pickups to things. I know a lot of people don't get papers anymore, but a lot of people still watch TV. And I would really like to see if maybe we could have Floyd or someone try to forward maybe us having a TV channel where that we could be able to put some of these things out that I think are very important to all of us on council, and I know definitely it's important to the staff, Mr. Kelly and staff, to try to get these out, because I know it's like pulling the proverbial hen's teeth, trying to get the general public educated in a lot of things of what we would like for them to be.
And I believe we have a social media coordinator that could perhaps be involved in something on this order as well.
Okay. The other one is kind of goes along the same way, the same vein, is that I would hope, and I mentioned this earlier, and there's only two things actually. I mentioned it earlier when we talked about the new trolleys, which thank you so much for getting the new trolleys. They're excellent. Is that they have video capabilities, and I think it would be incumbent on us to develop a video where that people, as they go through town, can look and see different activities that will be going on in town, and be educated in what that we have available, from shopping to dining to and I'm not talking about just downtown shopping. I'm talking about shopping in the shopping centers and everywhere. And to be able to use that as a marketing tool for a passive marketing tool on our trolleys. So that's the other one, and that is it. I think that's it.
All right, very good, sir.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Lowe, we're very pleased to have you back from your labors as you prepared to become a certified public accountant.
Prepared is the right word.
It's a long road. It's a long and winding road, but we admire you for your efforts.
Amen.
And
absolutely.
Would you care to comment on that or any other topic at the present time?
I would like to speak with Mr. Neese just a second. And the newspaper reporter's gone, so I'm more comfortable now, but I get as frustrated as you do about projects that seem like they go on forever. When I first came on council is when we had the first public hearings for where people thought sidewalks should go, and you were one of the first people to show up and speak, and so Whites Mill Road wasn't the only area that people identified. And so in the capital improvement plan, the citizens identified Whites Mill Road, Court Street, and Oak Hill. Well, it takes a tremendous amount of time for the staff to study some of those areas, like part of Court Street, way back when people first bought property, especially on Whites Mill Road. I have two pieces of property that go all the way to the road. And so the town doesn't actually own a right-of-way on those two pieces of property. And so it is very frustrating, I know, from the citizen side to wait this long, and I've been, as frustrated too, but I can assure you that I watch Mr. Dew and I watch the Public Works Department and the Planning Department on a regular basis. I sat on the Planning Commission for 4 years, and projects like this, everybody wants to see them move forward. I didn't know until Mr. Dew informed us, because, we don't know all the procedures that we have to go through as far as the administration is concerned. But I do know, I didn't know that until all of the easements are acquired, we couldn't start the project because of the VDOT, qualifications. So even though there's municipal rules that we have to follow, there are also some state regulations and rules that kind of get in the way, and when you have more than one government involved, it really, really slows down the process. And I've been frustrated about several of them, especially Country Club Estates. We kept thinking we were going to get started on that in May, and we still haven't been able to start that. So, I do understand your frustration, but I really do believe that in this vein, the staff has worked tirelessly to try to make this happen, because it was something that council identified as a priority. I do understand your frustration, and we are keeping an eye on it. We all are.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Good to have you back with us. Mr. Howard?
Just one item to reflect what Rick said, and I think that is a good idea, but I think one thing we need to do first is to come up with some way to increase the ridership on the trolleys, because I was at the fire station Saturday about noon. Both drivers had come through just to stop and get a drink. No ridership that morning. I don't know what we need to do to make that happen, but we really do, if we're going to continue to do this, try to figure out ways to increase our ridership.
Could I address that somewhat,
Sure.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Well, and you're exactly right, Bob. There isn't a lot of ridership on it, but one of the things is, I've sent people that stayed in the bed and breakfast over to catch a trolley for it not to be there, because it didn't start until after that I'd sent them over. That's my fault, not anybody else's fault. But I just gave Greg today some things, because Gallenberg is starting their trolleys, and they're starting right now. And they have a website, as well as all the their lodging and things have schedules of when the buses will come. So it really helps out when people are, once again, it's a process of education. And when you have people only coming in for a weekend, it's really great if you can, if whoever, Martha Washington Inn, Quality Inn, or whatever, can have a schedule in their room to say, hey, if you want to catch a bus, here's where the bus schedules are going to run. Now, on the Gallenberg, I did this for Greg and bought it in, but they have an information system on their mass transit, and you visit www.gatlinburgtrolley.org. So I think that we could do something like that would help. I know a lot of people who stay at our bed and breakfast, one of the first things they say is, they ask, do you all have a Wi-Fi? And if we do, most of them have, I would say probably, I don't say most, I would say half, 50% have a computer with them to check their emails and stuff. We could give them that email site, or that website, they could bring it up and they would know when they catch the trolleys. But you are right, it just, one of the things I think has been our problem is we've been inconsistent on having trolleys. We'll have them maybe for some of the music events, and then we won't. One of the things I think that you look at on First Thursdays, I'd say ridership has increased somewhere like that, because everybody knows they're going to be there on First Thursdays. I think also signage on the bus stops. Mr. Jackson and I have talked about like some signage where the bus stops will be, that it's going to be more appropriate. People will know where those are. There'll be a map available, and those things all help too. I do share your concern. I do think we're on the right path, and I think it's going to take. I think I'm not pie in the sky. I think it's probably going to take a good year of running it, and people know when it is, so that they'll get accustomed to it. So.
Okay, Mr. Berry.
I'm just going to say thank you to the citizens who came out tonight to provide us comments. We welcome your comments, and thank you for, keeping us at our job here.
Very good. It's been an interesting evening and a productive one, and I do thank everyone for being here. It's customary to point out that we have a couple of events coming up in the month of July. I almost said October, and we'll probably have something going then, too. Yes, sir.
This is the daughter of the Revolution Patriotic Ceremony.
What was you?
The first one.
The veterans is.
That's one.
Yes, that's correct.
It's not on there.
On July 4th, the Daughters of American Revolution will be sponsoring a patriotic ceremony at Sinking Spring Cemetery at 10 o'clock a.m., and I know that I try to be there every year. I hope to see, and Mr. Humphreys is usually there, we'll hope to see other council members there at that time. There will also be an event, I believe, at 2 o'clock that same day where a Blue Highway Blue Star Highway Monument will be presented by I believe it's the Garden Club. July 4th, we have our Coombs Recreation Center. The fireworks aspect of that event will begin at 9:45. On July 6th, we have the Red, White, and Beach Party at the Abingdon Market Pavilion. And on the 11th, the Thursday Jams with Pokey Lafarge. Might add the Thursday Jams are increasing in popularity. We had an awfully good event this past Thursday night, and we encourage you to come out for that. The Taste of the Town Trolley Tour will be on July the 16th. And then on the 18th, the Thursday Jam will feature the Iguanas. I am very pleased to announce that on the 18th of July, the Anheuser-Busch Clydesdale horses will be returning to the Abingdon Market Pavilion. We're expecting to have, the Clydesdales available. There will be a mini parade. I think Mr. Kelly and I will be manning the shovels and brooms that day. Yes, sir. We are experienced, and we encourage you to come out. We certainly, enjoyed having the Clydesdales with us, several years ago, and very pleased they can come back. And again, the Thursday Jam will be on the 25th with the group American Aquarium, and the Virginia Highlands Festival, that time is rolled around again, will run from the 2nd to the 11th of August. And remind me, please, the date of our work session is July the 17th, and I know we'll see some of you folks there with us for that event as well. We thank all of you for coming. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve. We do our best to do a good job for you. Tell us when we do things right. And I won't quote Bob Porterfield. The truth is, if you don't like us, you really do need to tell us. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We are adjourned.